A good week of work for the Bears, voluntary minicamp, great turnout, and the NFL draft ahead. We break it all down. Coming up here tonight on Bears All Access on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score with Tom Thayer, my broadcast partner from News Radio 105.9 WBBM, Super Bowl Bear Tom Thayer, and former Bears quarterback, former New England quarterback, former Pittsburgh quarterback. Who I left out? I forgot. Jim Miller, the great Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio, moving the chains. Big Jim, we only care you were a Bear. Right now, that's all that matters.
Well, the same here, man. Want the Bears to do well this year. And, hey, the draft is just around the corner. They'll have the opportunity to better themselves.
Our producer tonight, Dan Barilli, thanks to the folks here at The Score as well. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, Tom and I sat down this week with veteran receiver Equanimeous St. Brown, the former Green Bay Packer, excited about his opportunity here with the Bears. But we're going to talk about what transpired this week. Tom, first of all, it's about downloading. It's about setting tone. It's about establishing exactly what the expectation is, position group to position group, from the head coach down to the assistants, on what will continually be emphasized and expected to quicken the pace as they get toward the start of training camp. That's really what this is, an introduction. This is really day one this week with 3 practices.
Yeah, but Jeff, one thing about it, the coaches are paying attention to every single phase of what they're going through. They're paying attention to their attitude on the practice field. They're paying attention to their attitude if they want to be first in line or last in line. They're paying attention to their responses in meetings if they're being asked a question about material they've gone over a couple times. It's all those little things that they take into account that is really going to form the big picture. So there is no detail too small, no matter if they're in full pads or no pads. Everything is going to be formulated into the plan and the development of this team and roster.
Jim, as we'll hear from Matt Eberflus, we're going to play a few sound bites from him. He did say, especially after Thursday's practice, he felt the beginnings, the formulation of a team chemistry, the idea, especially on the defensive side of the ball. There was a lot of yelling and screaming and congratulations going on amongst players, coaches, voices heard. They were flying around. It's a defense where Eddie Jackson says, it's very simple. You don't have to be making 1,000 checks and looking around to see what's up. Everything's in front of you. You go and make a play. Familiarity to what we've seen in past defenses here in Chicago in the 4-3 under Lovie Smith. But to me, the most important thing is turnout as well, because the turnout was very good. A few guys not here, a few guys unable to go, but by and large, whoever's on the roster was here, and now they know what to expect, and they'll iron everything else out.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going on right now. It's a new regime. The players want to put their best foot forward. It's a clean slate, and it's important to be there to get evaluated, to see where you fit into the scheme, where you fit into the plans. And like you said, the team building aspect of it is huge. I mean, we're coming off of 2 years of COVID. I mean, players haven't been in the locker room. They've been separated. They've been doing Zoom-in meetings. Now they're actually in an auditorium. They're installing the plays like they were traditionally installed, and then you got to go out on the field and execute them. So it's going to take time. This is a new system offensively and defensively, and that team camaraderie, that building during the install is going to be important. But that's the first thing. It's the first time around in the install. It'll happen again, and it'll happen again at training camp also. So 3 times the players will be hit with it. And now it's about progress. Now that they can move on to the next step after each time a technique or a scheme or a principle is learned, players will get better. They'll get faster at it, but it's got to be done over and over again.
And we have to remember, Tom, a lot of new players that haven't played with each other before. This is not like whole defenses and offenses coming back together, plus the added wrinkle that you got a second-year quarterback that, it's almost like another rookie year. He's not looking over his shoulder. He knows he's the guy. He's going in as the number one. It's all on him. It's his team, as Matt Eberflus said. He's the guy we're looking towards right now. And there's going to be missteps. There's going to be errant throws. There's going to be routes run incorrectly. There's a lot of teaching going on. How do you evaluate this part of the process? Because it's easy to have folks come in, watch practice, and start writing and talking about, things that may or may not have gone well, but there's no pads and it's total education right now and nothing else.
Yeah, with the exception of a couple players that have played with some of the assistant coaches that are brought in or came from the Indianapolis coast that have been there with Eberflus and Williams, Everybody else is starting fresh. And, Matt said it early on from the podium that everybody's got a clean slate. So you do want to put your best foot forward. You want to give the indication to the assistant coaches that you're a student of the game, that you're enthusiastically approaching every one of your opportunities here. And then every day you go out there, you got to improve. This is not something that you can stand still. Dick Stanfeld used to say, your arrow has to be pointing up. As soon as your arrow starts pointing down, I got to look to replace you. And I think that goes from our era in the 80s to the 90s to this modern day era of football.
Well, it's a term called growth mindset, a topic that Matt Eberflus discussed after Thursday's practice at the podium at Hallis Hall.
After the practice, my main message was is that I said, hey, the in vogue term now is growth mindset, right? Everybody says that. Well, what does that mean? That means that I'm going to learn from my performance, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to take one rep at a time and learn from that. What can I take away from that rep? So as you watch this tape with your coaches, and as you watch it, how can I grow and to get better? Even if I throw a touchdown, or I make a TFL, or I make an interception, or I get beat over the top for a touchdown, there's learning that takes place in that performance. And we have to do a great job of learning through those performances. That's how you get better. And that's the new term, growth mindset.
So essentially, Jim, it's about just setting a new bar each day, whether it's the classroom or the field, and growth will come if boxes are checked and if guys are doing what they're asked.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's got to start somewhere. You look on the roster, the only receivers that are there that Justin Fields is thrown to is Daz Newsome and Darnell Mooney. Everybody else is new. They just signed David Moore yesterday. So where it starts is not where it's going to finish. There's going to be a huge shuffling of the deck. Tom will get into it on the offensive line. Larry Borum, is he a left tackle? Is he a right tackle? How's the offensive line going to shake out? What about the tight end depth? Where is that going to shake out? I think we know between the quarterback and the running back, Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, that's probably set right now, and the tight end with Cole Kmet. But who's the second, third, and fourth? The receivers got to shake themselves out. How the offensive line lines up. So it has to start somewhere. And guys are going to be moved in, moved out, depending on what you just said about the teaching, the learning aspect of it. And that's who will ascend and who will, as Tom pointed out, an arrow up. And then there are going to be guys who aren't going to do as well, and the arrow will be pointed down. The guys with the arrow pointed up, they're going to get more opportunities, and let's see what you got.
Yep, 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon. Eberflus said they had a meeting to meet with the coaches. They're going to go player by player. What do they do well? Will they be able to fit here? Because the draft is coming up, and we know that they don't have first-round picks. They do have a pair of seconds. They don't have all their draft picks, but they have enough to move around. But they're going to get a lot of undrafted guys, and they're going to look for what Ryan Poles has really discussed. Guys that have chips on their shoulder, guys that have been marginalized in their careers for a variety of reasons that are going to come in with attitude. And those undrafted guys this year, I think, are going to take jobs, as well as guys that have yet to be signed in free agency on these one-year deals. When we come back, we'll start discussing the NFL draft and what we learned over the course of 3 days from the individuals that came to the podium at Hallis Hall. With Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, I'm Jeff Joniak on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Welcome back to Bears All Access, brought to you by IGS Energy. Choose clean energy for your home at IGS.com, because every good choice adds up to a better world. My guys are here, Tom Thayer and Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio's Moving the Chains. What we learned this week, we'll start with Jim. Eddie Jackson, a lot on his shoulders, really. He admitted this week, it wasn't one of my best seasons. Admitted exactly what everyone felt about how he played last year, and they are giving him a clean slate. It's been talked about for every player, but in particular for Eddie. And I'm getting the impression that Matt Eberflus still believes that the best ball is still in Eddie Jackson because of the type of ball that he's shown he could play back in 2018, 2019. And so Eddie Jackson thinks this scheme is going to be best for him and best for a lot of these guys because of its simplicity.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, I think he was honest about it. He said, hey, I gave up too many deep balls. He just said, but again, in a system that had more checks, there was a lot more going on. This will be simplified, and Eddie will get a clean slate. But he has to get the new scheme down, like the back of his hand. And he's got to prove that. And when you prepare that way and approach it that way, which it sounds like Eddie Jackson is, you're going to play with more confidence within the scheme. And you're going to bond and gel with your teammates, knowing what their responsibility is and your responsibility. So, I agree with Eddie. I think Matt Eberflus is going to, the past is the past. It's what you do from right now moving forward. And he's going to be counted on to be a leader. I mean, let's be honest. He's a veteran safety at this point. He needs to focus on what he needs to do. I'm sure those demons are in the back of his head that he knows he can play better. And with it simplified, he should be able to play faster. And so he needs to be a key component. But even he has to prove himself to these coaches. What you've done with the past, that's been put to bed, man. It's that doesn't matter anymore. It's about 2022 and what he does moving forward.
Tom, has the past harmed him in any way? Third head coach. This is his fourth defensive coordinator, and annually, with the exception, well, I guess to Sean Gibson back-to-back years as a one-year free agent fill-in as his partner at safety, but Adrian Amos was with him for a couple of years, but there's been constant change at the other safety spot.
Well, I'm going to take a different approach to this, because if he wants to talk about the simplification of a system that he's going to be allowed to play in nowadays, then you cannot have mental errors. I'm not worried about mental errors of Eddie Jackson. I'm worried about his physical approach to the game. There's a lot of times I see when he should be approaching the line of scrimmage with the intentions of physically having a hard contact against the receiver or the ball carrier. But when you're backing up and trying to swat the ball out of the hands of the offensive player, that's what I disagree with. So if Eddie Jackson is going to come back into what the reason that he got paid, it's going to be because of a physical presence as much as a coverage ability. So Eddie, I need to see a play like a safety that we've seen around the league, that we've all played with throughout our career, and what really can make your mark on this team in this division.
Jackson this week on the idea that he's an X factor for the defense.
To be honest, I really don't even try to buy into that. Like I said, I know what I'm capable of, and that's what I want to get back to, is making those plays. That's the biggest thing for me, is just go out there, flying around, and, lead my guys. And that's by playing good, making plays, and, getting back to, how you're capable of playing.
What do you want this coaching staff to know about you, and what do you want to prove to them?
That I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to buy in, whatever it takes, whatever they ask from me, I'm willing to do it.
Jim, right down the middle of the defense, we start with, whomever is going to be that three-technique defensive tackle. We start with Roquan Smith and Nicholas Morrow on the inside, and we start with Eddie Jackson at the safety and whatever else they decide to do at the other safety spot. That has been discussed by Matt Eberflus, been discussed by Alan Williams, and, with everything in front of you and your back not turned to the quarterback, you should be making more plays on the ball and click and close.
Yeah, you should be able to key and diagnose and identify and see what's going on. But, you got to do your homework prior to your opponent that you're playing to know what's being presented you. If there are 2x2 sets or 3x1 sets, areas where they attack the middle of the field, as we know, it's going back to the traditional Tampa 2 defense. Not that they won't do single safety, but you've got to do your homework on your opponent of what to expect on certain plays. I think that's where preparation comes into it, where you can really take your game to the next level. It's great that everything's simplified and players can react, but they're still going to have to do their homework on the opponents that they're going to face. And I think, Eddie's a pro. He should be able to do that. The coaches are going to prepare him to do that through the game plan side of it, but those guys got to fly around and make plays. They're going to have to cover a lot of ground, whether it's Roquan, whether it's Nicholas Morrow, the safeties that are there for the Bears, and Eddie Jackson is going to be a big part of it. But being able to see what's in front of you, but you've got to be able to identify it, key and diagnose it, and react to it is what I would say.
Tom, Roquan Smith at the podium this week, too. Looks good. He's got a great attitude. Doesn't want to talk about contract stuff. I can't blame him from that. Some players don't want to get into that whatsoever, but he still feels he needs to get better in a number of areas. But the one thing that's interesting, he doesn't care wherever he plays. So some guys will want to say, hey, listen, I'm a middle linebacker in this, but he might play a weak side linebacker, and Eberflus is going to let it play out and see who's best fit. But in an ideal world, he'd love to have guys versatile and play everywhere so that he can get creative.
Yeah, that's what I liked about the 3 days of practice, that they did, kind of intermix the linebackers and allow them to play a little bit of everywhere. But one thing about Roquan Smith in the NFL level, This is the first time he's going to be playing with 4 down linemen in front of him. They're going to be the intent of protecting these linebackers so they can run laterally, so they can get in some coverages, so they can blitz when the opportunity is presented. So I'm super excited to see a guy like Roquan Smith and how he transforms from the defense he's played in from the day he showed up late to training camp his rookie year to being introduced to a new coach, a new style of defense. And now they're taking advantage of his assets. And his assets is tackling ability in the field with great speed, and that's what I want to see out of Roquan.
Also heard from Travis Gibson this week, Jim. He did a great job down the stretch last season. He forced fumbles. He got to the quarterback. He was very disruptive, and now he goes back to what he's done before. Hand in the ground. He says he's better. It's better for him to come out of that stance as opposed to a 2-point stance. So he feels he'll be more explosive. And if it's anything like Rod Marinelli has taught Matt Eberflus, it's all about get off.
Yeah, well, definitely about get off. And, it's not foreign to him. Like you said, he's been there before. He's been coached in this style of defense before, as you mentioned, and I think he'll be able to do it. He has transformed his body. He was very productive towards the end. He got his feet wet playing with a good amount of playing time, but he's going to have to learn some new techniques and obviously get comfortable again with the position that he's played before. It is about get off. It's about putting pressure and penetrating and getting in the backfield and all those type of things. And he's got to wreak some havoc. So he'll get used to it. I really don't. He's too good of an athlete not to, is what I'd say from his standpoint. So we'll see where it goes with him. And I think he should be excited about a change. And some players are apprehensive to it. But for him, he shouldn't be because he's done it before.
You sometimes think about this, Tom, and you hear about players working out together in the offseason and you wonder, does it really make an impact? It appears that that's the case. Matt Eberflus thinks whatever was done with Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet down in Georgia for 2 weeks before the start of the offseason program is a building block. Getting to know. They weren't running Bears plays necessarily. Mooney even admitted that. They're just running routes, just trying to get that timing down. Do you find significance in it? Does it bridge some gaps?
Yeah, I think it does. I think the more familiar you can become with the guys that you're going to be throwing to the ball to with regularity, then I think you get to understand a little bit about each other. Can you develop a communication system when you don't have time to verbally communicate, where you can just do with eye contact or with some body type of motion? However, I need to see more of a realistic time frame for Justin in practices. And Jim, I'd like to ask you about this because one thing that I think was unrealistic a little bit last year that frustrated me is holding onto the ball too long and thinking you're going to have that much time in a game. That's unrealistic. You're going to have a certain amount of time with the play you called, and you understand it breaking the huddle, and then when the ball has to be out of your hand when you run the play. So I think there needs to be more of a realistic time frame for Justin than unrealistically standing there waiting for the guy to come open.
Tom, are you talking about game tape for Jim or practice?
I was talking more about practices last year and the unrealistic amount of time Justin was thinking he was going to have when that just is not the case.
Well, I think you can correct that in practice if you always have a buzzer going off, on any particular play. So say in the background, say if it's a 3-step drop, the ball's got to be out of his hand in 1.5 seconds. If it's a intermediate route at a 5-step drop, 2.5 seconds, the ball's got to be out of hand. Top end, even on a 7-step drop, is probably about little over 3.5. Say if he's taking a 7-step drop to get the ball out of his hand, I'd say even you want it probably closer to like 3.2 is what you want. But have that buzzer going off at the snap of every ball. And he's got to be able to feel it too in practice and act like it's a game, meaning that if there's pressure to the right, hey, I may look at my first read, but I feel the pressure, I'm going to the check down. He's got to be more cognizant of that. I thought what was important this week is he admitted that they changed up his drops. I believe wholeheartedly with how they're doing it now. In shotgun, he will have his left foot forward and his right foot back. And that's important. It's significant because of this, because now you can just catch and release. What I mean by that, on wide receiver screens, if he signals something, he can just catch the snap count. Now his feet are already in position to throw it. If he throws to his right because he's a right-hand quarterback, it'll only be a 1-step throw. Literally, he'll just have to pick up his left foot, get it towards his target, and deliver the ball if he were throwing to his right. His left, he should already be able to do it with how his feet are positioned. So I think that's a good first step for him. It'll get better. He's got to get used to it. Some guys don't like it that way. But I think in the modern day of football, getting the ball out of your hands, what Matt Eberflus has talked about, is paramount. And your footwork's going to be a big part of it. But I think the clock and the buzzer going off, and for him, reacting like it's a game, that you're always constantly reminding him, hey, man, got to get that ball out of your hand. You had pressure there. You may have to move on from that read, dump it down to your check down. And it'll get quicker and quicker and quicker for him, but he's got to do it. He's got to do it. You got to constantly be on him and really force him along those lines.
Jim Miller, Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak coming up next. Tom and I join Equanimeous St. Brown, Bears' new veteran receiver, joining the program here on Bears All Access, brought to you by IGS Energy on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. This portion of Bears All Access is brought to you by CDW. People who get it, learn more at CDW.com. With Super Bowl Bear Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak from Hallis Hall, and this is Bears All Access, brought to you by IGS Energy on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Pleased to be joined now in this segment by new Bears receiver, Equanimeous St. Brown. How do you like to be referred to? I know they called you EQ. Is that work, or what do you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer my full name, of course, but I understand that some people may not be able to pronounce it, or I just know in the football business, a lot of people use nicknames anyways, so EQ is one of my many nicknames.
Ooh, what are the fellas calling you?
They call me EQ.
Yeah. Got other nicknames?
Q, my number 19, as in recent years, yeah.
So how does it feel to be a Bear now that you've had time? The offseason program got going on April 4th, so the weeks go by quickly, the days do as well, and how is it adjusting for you and so forth?
Feels good, you know. New city, big city compared to Green Bay, so a new team, a lot of new faces, and it feels good to be in a new system.
Hey, when you went to Green Bay, did Green Bay have similarities to Notre Dame? You know, because it's kind of a campus life. Everything revolves around that beautiful stadium in South Bend, and it's kind of the same thing in Green Bay. Did you get the same reflection of each city? When you went to Green Bay? Yeah,
it was very similar, other than the fact that Notre Dame had a school, a university, so there was a lot of students. There's a lot of things going on, where compared to Green Bay, it was just mainly just focused on football. But it's
kind of that same thing in Notre Dame.
It is.
That Notre Dame on the weekend, when everybody comes in for the game, the city becomes crowded.
Yeah,
and then when they leave, it empties out like Green Bay. But, you know, one thing I was curious of, is there a different pressure? Maybe pressure is not the right word. So you get drafted by Green Bay, and now you get selected by the Bears. Is there a different kind of way you're looking at approach to each of them, or is it the same because it's professional football?
For me, it's the same personally. I'm always going to attack football and my job as, you know, the best I can, put my best foot forward and work as hard as I can. It's just a new city, new team, so, you know, different elements, but the way I approach it, it's the same.
One of the things that is also the same is Luke Getsy, offensive coordinator now for the Chicago Bears, coming over from Green Bay. You also have your center is there as well. Is that help for you in the transition, and are you being looked to kind of spread the gospel, so to speak?
Yeah, it does. So it's a very similar offense we're running here. So I'm on the same page as Luke, and I'm sure that, you know, it's going to be similar moving forward, and I'm helping out the receivers, and it's not brand new to me, so that's good. There's some comfortability, some similarity there for me.
And as you arrive here in Chicago, and you know the fact is you picked the Bears as well. I mean that is a free agent moment for you. How would you put your career in focus in terms of what your expectations were when you got into the NFL and where they're at right now?
I'm on year 5 now, so you know, my first 4 years didn't go as expected or as I planned it, but you know, I am where I am now, so I got a new opportunity to go out there and make plays and you know, get paid, which is everyone's, you know, goal as an NFL player.
Is there any similarities between Aaron Rodgers and Justin, or is Justin a completely different athlete, or have you even been around him that much to understand what his long ball capabilities are, how accurate he is, what a great athlete he is in terms of, you know, challenging the rush?
Yeah, I don't think it's only been 2 weeks since I've been here, so I think once we get more into OTAs, I'll get a better feel for it. But from what I've seen, he's very accurate, but he adds a different element to, his athletic ability. So we'll see how that goes in this new offense. But, I'm excited to have him as my quarterback.
Through a couple times throughout my career when I went through a head coaching change, you're always kind of curious of what that new head coach is going to ask of you or challenge you with. And to me, I keep going back to when Matt said, well, you better bring your running shoes. Wide receivers can always run well. However, did that ever resonate with you going, okay, I got to get my track shoes on. I got to be able to run and be ready to run when training camp gets here?
Yeah, because I feel like personally, you could always be in better shape as any player, I guess. But for a receiver, yeah, you notice that some receivers get more gas than others. Some people could run longer, some people run faster. But when it comes to football, it's good to be in shape, and the better shape you're in, as it gets into fourth quarter, I think it makes a big difference. So I'm excited for him to push me, with my endurance.
Equanimeous St. Brown, our guest here on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. This is Bears All Access with Tom Thayer and Jeff Joniak. The league seems to go through these ups and downs in terms of what type of receivers they want. I think every team would love to have a basketball team, right? At receiver, throw the tight ends to the mix as well. But there was a time when the big receiver was what everybody wanted. Then it was the little guy working out of the slot, hard to deal with for corners who are a little longer now. Now the corners are all kind of long. The slot guys are even getting bigger, and teams now going, in my opinion, back to that size. You're one of those guys. You're a 6'5" frame. At least that's what they measured you right out of the draft, right? I know guys never know exactly what teams' measurements are, but 214, 219, something like that, in that range. Do you feel that the time is now coming around again for the big receiver to get those 50-50 balls, to be able to throw the speed on the table, which you also have, and run by corners for the deep ball?
Personally, I feel like it doesn't matter of your size. I feel like it comes to each individual to make plays as a receiver. Every receiver has different abilities, different talents that they grow up with, and different skills that they learn. But I think it's your job as a receiver to work on those, gifts that you have and those attributes, and make those into your individual skill sets and use that to make plays.
Well, since you were born, you're basically been working out. Okay, I'm gonna let the guy who was a weightlifting king deal with that topic, because look at me, I'm not that. So here we go. The great Clyde Emmerich, who the weight training room here is named after, would always say that I'm uncoachable, because he tried to get me there to pump that iron, but I was inconsistent. So that's been your life, and that's because your dad and your mom really put that, and academics first and foremost. So what a great story about your parents. And Tom the other day this morning says, hey, did you know his father was John Brown? I said, yes, I did. He goes, I never knew that. So Tom, take it away with Equanimeous.
Who's the most ripped one in your family?
As of now, I'd say it's my youngest brother. He's a little shorter, a little more, like bigger body, like swole compared to me. I'm taller, lankier, but I'm also getting older, so.
No, you're not. Stop saying
He's
that.
25, Tom. He's 25.
You're a young cat. You got the world ahead of you. Hey, what is the most transferable trait from what your dad has experienced in his life, Mr. Universe, Mr. World, all the whole competitiveness of bodybuilding? And I kind of grew up around it, so I know the challenges and the commitments these guys make. So when you look at yourself, now you look at your frame and you're a wide receiver, where most of the time when I was growing up, your frame would probably be a tight end. So what is the most transferable trait from what your dad grew up with as a bodybuilder and how he could pass it along as a football player?
I would say the discipline that bodybuilders have is unlike any I've seen. The stories he's told me about how they, year-round watch what they eat every day, their sleep and everything. I think the discipline that he taught me is what transferred over the best to football. The discipline and doing your work, doing your job, the way you eat, just your lifestyle. I think bodybuilders, it's a single-person sport, so if you lose, it's on you. So the discipline they have in that kind of sport is different than many others.
Did you ever get to, like, the Franco Colombos, the Lou Ferrigno, Sergio Olivier, and these guys? Did you ever get to rub elbows with them? When I was a kid and the movie Pumping Iron came out, featured Arnold Schwarzenegger and all these guys, I had to go to a movie theater in downtown Chicago to see it. But have you ever been in those atmospheres where You've seen the best of the best, and now you go to the NFL and you're surrounded by the best of the best again.
I've personally never been into bodybuilding like that. He's taken me to a couple of events and like things like that, and I met a few bodybuilders. I don't know their names personally. I think I only know Sean Ray, but I was never big into bodybuilding. Football was my thing, so I just used that to help me in the football aspect.
So is he still talk to you about stuff? Hey, what are you working on? Maybe you should try this. And
always.
Always, huh?
Always,
yeah.
Awesome.
Now I'm getting voice memos.
Well, it's please come back. We don't have enough time here today to get into your whole life, but it's fascinating what you and your brothers and Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit had unbelievable rookie year, and even though he's a competitor in this division, you must be quite proud of what his accomplishments were.
Yeah, I'm very proud of him. Just going through life with him, seeing how hard he worked. He deserves everything. So I'm glad that he's doing real well in Detroit.
Well, he's still the enemy twice a season now.
He is.
Welcome to Chicago. Equanimeous St. Brown, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
With Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. We'll continue with Bears All Access after this break on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. This segment of Bears All Access is brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an appointment in clinic or virtually and start feeling better tomorrow. With Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, former Bears quarterback from SiriusXM NFL Radio, moving the chains with Pat Kerwin, our weekly guest. A little bit more on what we heard from guys this week. I'm continually impressed, Jim, with Darnell Mooney. I know Tom and I have spoken many times with him. He's been on this show with you and on SiriusXM. The guy who worked and said he was going to be an expert route runner in year one, then bought himself a jugs gun to have great hands, emerged last season in a big way with the ball not going to anybody else and a bigger target total than him, and now anticipating a larger role and an offense where he's going to maybe stretch the field a little bit more with Justin Fields, so he wants to work on his conditioning. That's his number one right now, run. He said he wants to prepare for a 6-quarter game. Was really taken by what Cooper Kupp did in the Super Bowl on that one drive, exhausted after making 6 or 7 catches, getting the end zone, and he wants to be there in clutch time.
Yeah, well, Cooper Kupp was a middle-round pick as well, much like Darnell Mooney. So there's nothing there talent-wise that says to Mooney that he can't be that guy, and he can't be the number one guy. He kind of emerged towards the end of last year where he became the prime target for the Chicago Bears. So I think it's all in front of him. I don't think he's scared to do the work. As you said, he takes his first check and buys a gun machine. That's a step in the right direction where he's really getting the work done at home and doing the things he needs to do. And he knows right now he's their number one guy. He's going to be counted upon in the game time situations and probably clutch time situations. So he's preparing himself that way. So I like the mentality right now, what I'm seeing from Darnell Mooney.
Heck, Tom, I liked when it was brought up that Fields this week talked about Chris Olave from Ohio State. That's his guy, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, can he fall to the second round?" I don't see that happening in any way, shape, or form, or go up and get him type of guy. And they asked Mooney about these other receivers, Garrett Wilson as well from Ohio State, and some others that he has recommended that these would be great guys to play with. He's not afraid of having great players coming into the mix. He just wants to win. And that's the same mentality David Montgomery touched on. I just want W's. I just want to win games. And if they don't think like that, they're not going to be that. They're not going to be winners. I like the way these young guys are thinking.
Me too. I've always been big fans of Darnell Mooney and David Montgomery, and I like the fact that they're willing to accept a bigger role in order for this team to succeed. If you want to say who is your number one receiver, I want a guy to stand up in front of the line and say, I am. And I think Darnell Mooney is that type of guy. He can take on a bigger role. If he wants to condition himself more so he can be fresher, so he can create more opportunities for himself. It's the same reason that Dave Montgomery was able to recover when he had an injury at the beginning of the season, but he was ready by week 1. You have to have these guys showing an attitude that they want to be the guy that has that number one above them, because I think it kind of creates motivation within the room that they're leading the wide receiver and the running back room. So I enjoy these guys. I think they're true assets for the Bears, and I think they're the type of guys that can help this team get back on track and compete inside the division.
And here's how Mooney is describing his level of work to try and help understand and help Justin Fields be a better quarterback and he become a better receiver?
I leave it all up to him. I try to just do what I can as best for him. So whenever I run a route, I don't try to do it as best for me, as how I feel. I just try to do his best for what he feels. So if he feels like on this route, hey, just win, I'll get you open. Or just I'll throw it to the spot. Just make sure you just win. I'll just do that. But I'm never just trying to, win my route on the best way I feel. Like, I'm just trying to be his best for him. Like, some of the things last year, I would watch some of his tapes from Ohio State of, like, his receivers, or, like, where they were at some of the plays that we would run from his Ohio State days. And I would just watch how they would run it and how he was comfortable throwing the ball. It would be like a perfect pass. So I would just try to watch their highlight tapes or whatever. Just try to be in the best position, the same position.
So going back and studying the Ohio State receivers and how Fields throws to him, Jim, you would think these are no-brainer ideas, but some guys don't put in that kind of work, and that's what Mooney did.
Yeah, well, he puts in a ton of work, and like you said, I don't see any of those Ohio State receivers being there in the second round. So Mooney better put in a little bit of extra work. Let's just put it that way, because if they draft some receivers later in the draft, yeah, they'll be welcome aboard as well, and hopefully they'll emulate the hard work that Darnell Mooney is putting in. But I think Olave and Garrett Wilson are going to have their name called pretty quick.
And here's what David Montgomery's all about. You know, Matt Eberflus says he's looked for M&M guys, mean and have motors. And David Montgomery was one of the guys that Eberflus referred to as an M&M guy.
I definitely appreciate being recognized in that manner. But I also understand, like, who I am and the kind of character that I have. So that's just how I carry out myself day to day. I want to be the best me that I can be, and always improving. So however it may be and however it may look, I want to be sure that I hit it.
Tom, we've heard this before. I mean, David Montgomery will run through a wall for you. And so will Khalil Herbert. And I think the backfield, with the addition of Darrynton Evans, the fullback blasting game into the mix here as well. I mean, Herbert, we talked about his lower half appearance. His legs are like steel-belted tires. He even looks thicker and stronger as he started this minicamp. He had his shorts rolled up, showing him off. He's got some. He's not quite A.J. Dillon in terms of those kind of thighs, but he's got some pistons there to churn the football. And Montgomery looks swift as well.
You know, I think Matt Eberflus, as much as he thinks he knows about Dave Montgomery, he's really not going to know the real Dave Montgomery until game day. And that's when I think you gain an appreciation for his work ethic, his strength, his tackling, breaking ability, his ability to carry and catch it as many times as you want to give it to him, his attitude that he has on the field, that, you know, he wants to be the number one guy in the room. He wants to be the number one running back in this team. And I appreciate Khalil Herbert, because I think no matter how motivated you are as a guy like Dave Montgomery, it's always nice to be pushed by a guy behind you that has similar traits to what Montgomery is offering you. But I do think Matt Eberflus will gain a much bigger appreciation for Dave Montgomery when the regular season gets here.
Jim, I flipped all this. You know, I was asking Tom about Justin Fields, and he's asking you about Justin Fields, as the quarterback should. And now I'm asking you, Jim, about offensive linemen that Tom will want to weigh in on. But so what do you take out of having Tevin Jenkins playing right tackle this week, and then having Larry Borum on the left side of the offensive line? It's just now. They will alternate. There will be mixing and matching going on. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I thought when Larry Borum had a chance to play left tackle, it was encouraging. I mean, that is a big athlete with good feet. He's got the basketball background. Love that about him. And I think, you know, no harm, no foul. Try him out there. See how the fit is early. How is he reacting to everything? Granted, the pads aren't on right now, but you're just looking at footwork, technique, and assignments. It's going to be assignment-driven right now, and he has the athletic ability to do it. Tevin Jenkins got in late towards the year. There's probably a bigger body of work for Larry Borum, and maybe that's why he gets first dibs, and we'll see what Jenkins can do at the right side. But like I said, where it starts right now doesn't mean that that's how it's going to finish. You know, Larry Borum is getting an opportunity here, and we'll see if he can take advantage of it, because if it goes through camp, when they put the pads on and he continues to pass the test, I think he could be a terrific left tackle. I'd like to hear Tom's comments, because I like his ability for how big he is. His agility is to me, left tackle NFL caliber when I look at Larry Borum.
Yeah, two things. I think you want to put these guys in the most confident position you can put them in once they break the huddle. And to me, I think Tevin Jenkins is a more confident player at right tackle, using his strengths and the assets that he has to play at an NFL level. To me, last year, when Tevin Jenkins started the Seattle game in the snowstorm and he left after the third play of the game, and all of a sudden, without any notice, Larry Borum was inserted to come in and play left tackle. And he played a really good game. They went on to beat the Seattle Seahawks. And that's the preparation that you need to have. It's not necessarily, I got to be guaranteed I'm going to play this position because that's the only position I can be ready for. Larry Borum came in there as a backup that day, and by the fourth play of the game, he was playing left tackle. This guy is a bona fide starter at left tackle. Now, can he stay out there for 17 games a year? That's the biggest question that needs to be answered, and that's kind of the development of the demeanor, of the toughness that you have to grow as a player into the career of in the NFL. If Larry Borum can stay healthy and stay on the field, this guy can be your left tackle for a period of time.
This portion of Bears All Access brought to you by CDW. People who get it, learn more at CDW.com. Time to step away. One segment to go. We'll start talking NFL draft. And before our big show Monday night, we will also get deep into the draft week with Jim Miller and Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. The Miller Lite Bears Draft Party back at Soldier Field, where you can meet current players and tour the Bears locker room and get instant draft analysis from Big Tom Thayer and yours truly. Tickets on sale now at chicagobears.com/draft party. Back at Soldier Field, Tom. Jim, you'll be in Vegas, right? Working the NFL draft. That's always a good time. But we'll be there Friday, Tom, 5 to 10:30. At Soldier Field with Khalil Herbert, Justin Jones, Cole Kmet, Zach Miller, David Montgomery, Darnell Mooney, Nicholas Morrow, Al Qadin, Mohammed, Lucas Patrick, Roquan Smith, Charles Tillman, and Cody Whitehair, among others.
Wow.
So going to be a big crowd, and it's always a good time, that's for sure. Tom, if a position of strength slips to the Bears that you feel they already, hey, you know what, we may not actually need this player, are you willing to take the grade over need?
Well, I don't know, Jeff. I mean, I would really look for a player that I need. I don't want a guy that's going to come in and sit on the bench or be a project for a couple of years. You get a guy like Kenyon Green. He's got kind of tackle guard traits. And if you're really not confident in the type of players that you have, first of all, if I was an offensive lineman on this team, I'd be personally offended that a majority of the conversation is about how bad the offensive line is. And I would take it to heart, and I would try to do something about it. However, if you could get a guy that comes out of a program that's a multiple position player and can maybe fill two holes on a game day roster, or be able to come in and compete as an immediate starter as a guard that maybe you can develop into a starting tackle. I would have to, take everything. I don't, nothing's off the board, and I would have to consider everything when you look at the roster and where you need to go in the future.
Jim, I've seen some people now saying, hey, is there a chance that the Iowa center, Tyler Linderbaum, could fall out of the first round? Is that a realistic?
That's smokescreen draft nonsense.
Yeah,
is what that is. You're going to hear in the next week. You're going to hear all the bad things about these players to try and get them to drop down. Linderbaum will be playing about a decade in the NFL. He's a good player.
Jay is attacking the evaluators, saying that he's got short arms, where Jay thinks having short arms for a center is actually a good thing, because you snap the ball quicker and you get your hands up into the opponent quicker. And I know he's gone after Mel Kiper a couple times on Twitter because of some of the evaluators that are and the things they're saying about him. But
they're 31 3/8, Jim. Does that get it done?
Casey Wigman had small arms. He played 16 years in the NFL. Casey Wigman, former Bear. Short arms he was classified as. He's a good athlete, can get to the second level, quick as a hiccup. I never beat Casey Wigman in racquetball. That guy kicked my ass every single time we got on the racquetball court. Incredible athlete. Linderbaum is a very good player. He'll play for a decade or more in the NFL.
Yeah, from the first day he gets there.
I'm interested to see, what happens at receiver because there are so many, and again, it's all different flavors. You're suggesting that not as many could go in the first round.
Yeah, well, look at the skill position players. When have you ever heard of a skill position player not being drafted in the top 10? I mean, we're talking, some people think, realistically, Carolina should start the run on quarterbacks at 6. They can't trade for anybody. So you would think that Kenny Pickett, who's probably the most prepared to play in the NFL, he realistically should be Carolina's pick at 6, but nobody's mocked him there. Nobody, everybody's got the quarterbacks going, but it's not until the mid-teens. And then you've got question marks about guys like Trey London or Treylon Burks, who, these are big physical receivers, but they're not blazers.
Tom, has anything changed in your analysis? Because we just touched on this. You never want to draft desperate because you don't feel you have a guy that can start right away, and you're just going for absolute need, but you want to make sure you get the best possible player at the same time. So you've hinted at corner. You've hinted at offensive line. Like, is there one position? Be really specific. Like, is there a one specific spot, a gotta-have-it guy?
Well, if you can give me an interior defensive lineman, that's going to make a difference to the slow down running game to get the pressure on the quarterback. And I trust Matt Eberflus, and I trust Williams. I trust these guys that have defensive, that's their background. If they feel there's a guy out there that can come in and they believe is a plug and play, a plug and contribute type of guy, then bring him aboard.
Bears fans can't panic. That it's really these players. It's about developing these players this year. Yes, they're going to draft him. They're going to play him. No coaches' jobs are on the line. Their job is to develop these young players and get this team ready for next year. Now, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news here and say, the season's all for naught, but that's really what it's about. They're changing their scheme offensively and defensively, and they have to find the guys that fit. And it's really going to be up to the coaches of how quickly they can draft and develop these players to get them up to speed so the foundational year is in place. Then year 2, they hit the ground running.
All right, we're out of time, boys, but we'll be right back. On Monday night, it'll be all draft. We're going to break down position by position, sleepers, guys that you guys have circled in your research that would be great Bears, and you envision that possibility. We'll have some fun on Monday night.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right, Jim Miller, Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks to our producer, Dan Briley. Thanks as well to Equanimeous St. Brown for joining us, and thank you all for listening. This has been Bears All Access on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. We'll talk to you Monday. Good night, everybody.